the pandemic did a lot of things to a lot of places, but from everything I've seen about Cincinnati, it really continued to thrive even during lockdown and return from lockdown and all these things. So
Mhm.
it's really encouraging to see a really healthy conference and community. But my favorite thing about Momentum is the people. I have really gotten to enjoy the Cincinnati tech community. Attendees to the people organizing the events to the speakers who attend, I think it's really something special. Feels small and yet it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's just so well done.
Hello, once again. My name is Dave Agrawal, and I'm an organizer for Momentum, which is the annual developer conference that's held here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And today, to talk about Momentum and this conferences in general with us, we have Matt Eland. How's it going, Matt?
It's going really nicely. It's nice to see you. It's always fun to chat with you.
Thanks. That's great to know. Do you want to give a short introduction?
Oh, sure. So I've been doing software development for 20 years professionally. I'm up in Columbus, Ohio. I can't. I still have trouble spelling Cincinnati. That second "in" always trips me up. But I kind of fell in love with the Cincinnati tech community in 2020 when the pandemic and the lockdown hit, and I got to attend the Cincinnati Software Craftsmanship group virtually, and then momentum and momentum and momentum. I found it's a really great conference and I love it. And I really enjoy the Ohio tech community and supporting that. And I think momentum is just a fantastic event and it just keeps getting better.
That's great to hear. So you said you got involved with the Cincinnati or the. Did you get involved with specifically Cincinnati tech community, or before that, like how involved were you with the tech community in Ohio in general?
So, Ohio has been my home for the last half of my life. Um, when the Star Trek conference in Columbus started up, I was there at the first one. I've been actually at most of that
Nice.
conference. They tend to sell the tickets while I'm on a plane flight to celebrate like an anniversary trip or whatever, and it sells out, and then I can't go some years. But other than that, I'm there. Um, and I actually met some of the organizers of various Cincinnati groups up at the Code Mash conference in Sandusky
Nice.
in early 2020, and they told me about CSC and Momentum, and I started to pay attention to the Cincinnati tech community, and so I got this very broad interest in Ohio and all the awesome things that are happening in and around Ohio.
Nice. And you said you went to the first Star Trek. When did you start speaking at conferences?
So I think the first Star Trek was 2009, is Star Trek 2009.
Hmm.
In that year. And I think that was actually the year I first gave a talk at a user group. I
Okay.
was hanging out the Windows Phone user group in Columbus, Ohio, and they're like, "Hey, we need a speaker next month. Matt, you've built some apps. Why don't you just talk about something?" I can't talk to anybody. Why would I talk to somebody? And I got through it and gave another one a
Hmm.
couple years later. But I didn't really start like purposely speaking in events and looking for places to speak and mentor others until about 2019.
2019. Okay. And where? How did you start? Like, what was your first conference that you applied to
Well, the way I
properly?
started was a conference that I've never actually spoken at,
Okay.
and that would be the JavaScript and Friends conference in Columbus, Ohio.
Nice.
Again, I think I'm just trying to name all the conferences in Ohio at this point, right?
Hey,
But
that's
I
also going
attended
to
a
be the
talk.
first conference I'm speaking at.
Really? Oh yeah, I was an evaluator for that conference, so I guess I accepted your talk. Um,
Nice.
yeah, but I attended a talk, and it was two people talking about gRPC in a room, and there was like about six attendees. It's a very small conference that year, and it occurred to me like hey, these people are just human. They are just
Hmm.
people who have known things. They are interested in something and they want to share it with other people. I'm like, well, I care about other people. I can share things too. And so I started dipping my toe in the water at the Central Ohio.net developer group, which I now help run,
Hmm.
and then Code Mash, Stir Trek, Momentum, and it's been really a life altering thing. But it's been really good to invest in things that give so many people value
Hmm.
out of them because I know I've gotten so much value myself from tech conferences.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like the sentiment that speakers are just regular people. Uh, I had the pleasure of meeting Ian Cooper at KCDC, and
Mm.
I watched a bunch of his talks online on YouTube. And pretty much every talk that he gives, he starts it out by saying, I'm not smarter than you all. I just had some opportunity to speak here, and I'm speaking, and anyone can have this opportunity. You all can become a speaker, and I really appreciate that. So you were a speaker at Momentum last year, right?
I was, yeah. I
Were you a speaker
spoke.
before that?
Yeah, I was a speaker in. So I was accepted for 2020. The event was canceled in 2020.
Right.
I was a speaker in 21 and 22, and now it looks like I'll be a speaker again in 23. So that's
Congrats.
I got a little bit of a run going on here. I'm feeling very blessed and lucky.
Nice. How was the experience speaking at Momentum?
It was fantastic. I gave last year. I gave I think 18 conference talks. I kind
Wow.
of did the Die Hard tour across Midwest, talking about Die Hard and machine learning,
Right.
and I had a lot of fun talking about Azure machine learning and Die Hard and how you could use it to classify Die Hard as either a Christmas movie or non-Christmas movies. Spoilers: it's a Christmas movie. Um, but I think of all the versions of that talk I gave, I
Mhm.
loved the one at Momentum maybe the most, just because the crowd was so into it. It was just a really great atmosphere to attend and to speak in.
Yeah, for sure. That's similar to what I've heard from a lot of other people. And were you also a content reviewer, or is this your first year content
This is my
reviewing?
first year as a content reviewer. I'm
Okay.
I've gotten to see a lot of different sessions from a lot of different conferences, and
Hmm.
it always blows me away the creativity of the things that people submit. Um, and I learned so much just by reading the abstracts people send in. And the thing that's really frustrating is that you get a conference like Momentum or Stir Trek or whatever,
Hmm.
there could be about a 6 or 7% acceptance rate, and and most of those talks are great. um, but it's just, oh, there's only so many you can accept, but the ones that you get to see are just truly fantastic. And I think the speakers really appreciate that too when they get those
Hmm.
acceptances and they know it's a low percentage chance that they're going to be accepted. It really makes it special. You put a lot more effort in the prep. Not that you don't put a lot of effort in, but it's just okay. This is a lot big responsibilities. There are people who paid a decent amount of money to come here. Let's really give it my all to give the best experience
Hmm.
and support the learners.
Yeah. Damn, talking about acceptance rates reminded me of applying to colleges and how we used to talk about, oh, this college has this much acceptance rates, apply here and do more work here. Flashbacks.
Yeah, I'm not the numbers guy. I don't like putting a lot of things out there and seeing what
Hmm.
stick. I get very emotionally invested in a couple key things, and so
Hmm.
that can be brutal in a lot of areas of life.
For sure, yeah. And it's not like the acceptance rate really says something about the quality of the content. It's just the quality of competition, really.
Mhm. And conferences are really they're trying to give a broad range of people a good
Hmm.
experience, right? You got people who are trying to get into tech. You got people who are managing. You got people who are specializing in areas. You want to
Hmm.
have something for everybody. And I know it's a fantastic conference when I'm trying to plan out my day, and it's like I want to see all of these things.
Yeah.
um, because when I'm going to a conference, even if I'm speaking, I'm still attending because it's
Hmm.
physically impossible to learn everything in tech because it just keeps
For sure, yeah.
expanding the things you can learn. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure there was a time when there were one or two books that encapsulated everything there is to know, but this is not this is not the same age anymore. Any other conferences that you've done content review for?
At this point, Code Mash, JavaScript and Friends,
Hmm.
Star Trek, and Momentum are the ones that I help to some degree or another with. And when you are some of those conferences let you submit if you're also a reviewer, some of them
Hmm.
don't. But if you do submit, then you're not rating your own sessions, obviously.
Right. Yeah, it will be like the track that you submitted to, it will not be available to you, right?
Yeah, or
Okay.
you click ignore on yours, and it just sort of it
Okay.
balances out the numbers. Yeah.
Got it. So, talk to me about content review. What does it look like? Like, what is the like when you open Session Eyes, when you have the proposals in front of you? What is your approach to it? What are you thinking?
As far as evaluating or submitting?
Evaluating, not submitting.
Okay. So in evaluation view, you get three different sessions up. So, A, B, and C. And it
Hmm.
says, hey, which one's the best? Which one's the second best? Which one's the worst? Right.
Right.
And that can be really hard because it's asking you to compare sometimes, apples to turnips to watermelons. And it's like, these are three very different talks.
Yeah. Session
And
Ice doesn't know that.
yeah, well, yeah, but you rank them based on the criterion you say. Like my goal in reading them is to read them as a attendee would, right?
Hmm.
So if I'm an attendee, can I tell what this talk is about with a quick scan? Does the title tell me that I should read the abstract? Does the abstract very clearly tell me what problem it's going to help me solve? Um,
Hmm.
is this a relevant problem for me? Is this a problem that I'm suffering from? Um, and that can be hard too because some of the really cool talks are about things you didn't know you wanted to attend a talk on. Um,
Right.
but so you start ranking things based on, okay, this is really good, this is really solid. Sometimes you know who submitted it, sometimes you don't. For Momentum, it was all anonymous, so I didn't know, who would submitted what. Although obviously I recognize my my own abstracts.
Yeah.
um,
Or someone you know closely, personally. You can probably
yeah,
understand their writing.
yeah, and you have to distance yourself a little bit from that too. You have to put yourself in the attendee view of like, hey, what would I, if I had to pick between these, which one would I attend? And not
Hmm.
as a Matt who's really interested in data science, but Matt who's just an attendee, like the various flavors of me throughout my life and career. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, but the nice thing is that I know for these conferences that I'm not determining, who gets in and who doesn't. I'm just saying, hey, what are the good, what are the best talks? And then the
Hmm.
organizers, such as you, uh, are going in and saying, hey, of all the high rated ones, which ones can we pick to make the best all around conference for everyone? And I think that
Hmm.
way you get a really diverse set of viewpoints, and then you also get something that's really geared for the attendee. Um, but I love conferences just because it can help spark your interest. You can say, "Oh, I'm feeling really engaged." It can help you learn something new. Like I didn't know this view was a thing that I could go look at in this tool.
Yeah.
It can help you learn of something new to dig into. And I think it can really even help you be connected. The people you talk to over lunch,
Mhm.
chat with somebody in the same session. You
Yeah.
start to develop these relationships, and you start seeing the same people over and over and again in the community, and that's really cool too.
Hmm. Yeah. I would say though that I was fortunate enough to not have to make that decision. Like of like which talks get selected or not. I left that up to the veterans. Maybe I'll get involved with that next year. Um, but yeah, it did. From all the conversations, it did seem like the level of content was really high, and it was really difficult to pick between the like what 400 sessions or something that were submitted at the end.
Yeah, 425 rings a bell to me. Yeah, it was a
Hmm.
lot.
Yeah. So, what do you think attracts? Like, how do conferences attract this level of quality proposals and quality speakers?
I think it's something that evolves over time, and I think we're seeing it evolve over time with momentum. Um, you start out, you get somebody in your social circle who speaks, and they attend a
Hmm.
conference, and they come back and they say, "Hey, this is a really good conference. You should come over here." Or someone attends a conference and says, "Hey,
Hmm.
this is a really good conference. You should attend or submit or whatever it is," right? And
Hmm.
that reputation starts to grow. And
Hmm.
pun intended here, you build up a little bit of momentum, right? And so you start to get almost like these virtuous circles where
Hmm.
you have really good year, and that attracts the attention of more people. So you get more topics and more options to pick from. And it gets
Right.
harder and harder and harder to select people over time, but you have a better and better conference as a result. And I think a lot of that is really tied to the health of the community as well. Um, and the pandemic did a lot of things to a lot of places, but from everything I've seen about Cincinnati in particular, it really continued to thrive even during lockdown and return from lockdown and all these things. So
Hmm.
it's really encouraging to see a really healthy conference and community.
That's great to hear. So, you've spoken at a lot of conferences, like you just mentioned. What, 18 conferences last year?
18 talks, but
18
it was
talks.
fewer
Yeah.
conferences, yeah, and
Okay.
many were from my basement, but
So fewer conferences. Was it like multiple talks at a conference or okay?
yeah, yeah. Usually, you'll get a multi-day conference. They'll take 2 or 3 year talks, and yeah,
Yeah, this is honestly a new concept that I found out when I went to KCDC. I
mm,
didn't know conferences did like mul- uh, multiple talks with the same speaker.
yeah,
So that was exciting to learn.
yeah. It, I'm not sure which I prefer better to be honest with you, right? Like, if I'm going to travel and take time off of my schedule, it's nice to get a couple talks in,
Hmm.
um, especially if it's multiple days. But at the same time, if I'm just giving one talk, I can make sure it's a really, really great talk, right?
Hmm.
Um, and also, once I give it, I can enjoy the rest of the conference and not have to be
Yeah,
nervous about my next one.
yeah. So yeah, I was wondering more about that. Like when you go to speak at a conference, what is your day or multiple days of conference? What do they look like? Like what do you do at a conference as a speaker, other than like just giving your talk?
Well, as a Matt, I'm a very different person than most speakers, I would say.
Okay.
Um, 'Cause I tend to be a little bit more reserved. I tend to be a little bit more hyper focused on preparation, right?
Okay.
So the night before my talk, I'm giving that talk in my hotel room and trying not to disturb anyone nearby through the
To a
door or
mirror.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but I am practicing and practicing and practicing. Um, Usually I can't focus about an hour before my talk, and then an hour after my talk, I'm not human. I have to go around, be a little social, and then also my brain will calm down a little bit.
Hmm.
I'm an introvert. It's a little hard to get in front of people.
Hmm.
As odd as it sounds from someone who gave 18 talks last year. um,
Exactly.
but when you care about people and you care about
Hmm.
technology, and you see the impact it has on people,
Hmm.
even over time. I actually just got a message from someone today saying, Matt, at our workspace, we just watched your video from Star Trek this year. I'm like, oh wow, that's very flattering. Um, but it helps you get over that anxiety, the nerves, and submit for the next conference. Like,
Hmm.
a lot of the speakers that I'm friends with, they'll spend a lot of time in the speaker room, chatting and making connections, and it's kind of cool because you do see a lot of the same people from conference to conference, and so you start
Hmm.
to develop friendships and you start to learn from other people, and that's really fun too. But I also think there's a lot of value to get just from going to talks, especially talks from people you don't know, talks about stuff you don't know about, even talks you stuff that you really really know. You can learn
Hmm.
a lot from how other people teach it.
Of
So
course. Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if you understand a technical concept, hearing it from a different perspective still helps fill in some gaps that you didn't even know were there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I say this about all of my managers I've ever had in my career. Each manager I've ever had has helped me be a better manager for the times that I've been a manager, by showing me what to do and what not to do. Right.
Hmm.
And so every speaker I see, it shows me, well, here's something you can try. Have you
Hmm.
tried, putting music on while you're waiting for your talk to start? Have you tried, doing this? And some
Hmm.
things work for some people. They're not going to work for me because I have a different personality, different style, and that's okay.
Hmm.
Um, but I think together we can all get better at technology or teaching or whatever it might be, managing. There's just so much in life you can always get better from, and
Yeah.
the best way of getting better from is the learning from different people.
Hmm. And give 18 talks in a year so that you've tested every possibility.
Believe it or not, I constrained my geographical area just to just the Midwest and online events, but still, yeah, 18. I was like, and that all came from a conference I cared about a lot, rejecting me early on in the year. I'm like, okay, well, I really want to be able to speak at least some this year, so I'm just going to
Hmm.
put applications out to all these conferences because they can't all accept me, right? Uh, as
Guess
soon as you
what?
say that, now then they do, and it's like, oh, okay,
Damn. You underestimated yourself, Matt.
yeah.
So, do you have any tips for people who are going to speak at speak at a conference? Maybe it's their first time, or maybe even if it's their fifth or sixth time.
I'd like to talk about the first time in particular here. because
Okay.
I think this is one of those things where like, oh, I can't speak at a conference. Yeah, you can, because everybody knows something, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are in your first year as a programmer, you know something. You know what it's like to learn programming in 2023, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what it's like to get that job in that tough economy. You know, something, um, and you have your own unique perspective on it. So what you ought to do is you ought to think about, well, what am I excited about? What am I really good at or really interested in that
Mm-hmm.
other people might want to learn from? Or what am I okay at, but would really like to learn a lot more over the next 3 or 4 months if someone accepts
Mm-hmm.
this talk? Um, and then you come up with those key topics, right? And for each topic, then you start coming up with titles. You come up with a title, and then you come up with 10 more. You always want to keep coming up with titles because your first one is almost never the right one,
Mm-hmm.
and the title can really make a lot of difference for someone paying a lot of attention to your abstract or someone's just kind of shrugging and moving on, right?
Right.
Once you're done with the title, then you're starting to write your abstract. The abstract, it's a fancy word, but it just means, what are you going to learn in this talk? I'm giving you 50 minutes of my life, an hour of my life. What are you going to
Mm-hmm.
learn from here? Right.
Right.
And so I usually start out with a problem, a technology, um, things we'll talk about, and then how it will change you coming out of the talk. Because that's what people generally care about when they are trying to see if they want to attend a talk versus another talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's tends to be what I look for when I'm reviewing abstracts as well. Um, it's not too hard. Uh, it can be hard. um, it can be deceptively hard to write
Mm-hmm.
something that flows well.
Yeah.
Um, but the key thing is you're not alone, right? Most conferences I know will welcome the chance to review your abstract before the CFP call for proposals, call for papers ends, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you come up with something, you send it to Dave, you send it to me, you send it to whomever, and we'll say, oh, this is great, but I didn't quite get this, or maybe you could try a different title, or maybe you could try a different angle on this, right? And you iterate on it. You have a couple different things. You show it to a couple different people, and you start to
Mm-hmm.
learn a little bit more about it, right? Um, and just understand that even if a really great abstract, it might not get accepted. It just depends on what you're up against, what event the organizers are interested in. Um, Maybe you've got somebody on the reviewing team who really hates some aspect of your technology. Um, but I will usually send a handful of topics over to a conference, and they'll either reject them all or they might accept one or two.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all stuff that I know I can give a talk on in 2-3 months time, right? Give me a little bit of
Got it.
prep time. Some of them I
Mm-hmm.
have ready already. Most of them I'll polish up and refresh a little bit. Um, but you don't have to have it ready to go. You just have
Mm-hmm.
to be able to present it, after a few months of prep. And
Yeah.
that's usually fine for a 50-minute talk, 60-minute talk, something like that.
Got it. And always reach out to organizers and other speakers to collaborate and iterate on your proposal.
Yep. Momentum has a Slack. If you post in there like, "Hey, I'm thinking about applying this year. Would anybody be interested in helping with me with my abstracts?" You're
Mm-hmm.
going to get probably 5, 6 people jumping on that, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Even half a year before the conference.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. Speaking of momentum, we just announced our speaker and session lineup. So, do you have any favorites except for your own?
I do. I have a couple that were really interesting to me in reviewing. I've only looked over the accepted list, I think, once, so forgive
Okay.
me if I get the names wrong or whatever. Actually, I'm not even going to try with the names. But there was one, and I still remember laughing over this one when I read it in the reviewing. But it was talking about this guy named Chet Gupta, and someone basically came up with this character named Chet Gupta that he went through his company's job application process and was hired
Oh,
on, based on technical competency, code generated, interview question answers, that kind of thing. Well, Chat Gupta is an acronym or alias of Chat GPT. So is a talk about the hiring process and how
oh,
it might be a little bit broken now that the all this fun stuff with AI is going on.
mhm.
So I'm really excited to see that one. The schedule hasn't come out yet, so I might be speaking my talk during that talk, but that's
Mhm.
one that's definitely on my short list to go to. Um,
Got
there's
it.
a gentleman out of Indianapolis that I know I've met him in a few conferences now. He's giving a talk on probability and uncertainty, and it's a really catchy title. I can't quite remember. I'm very interested in that one.
The
Sort of
law
your
of two
conference
feet.
to benefit from as you want.
Hmm. Yeah, the law of 2 feet.
Hmm.
You have
Uh,
2 feet, so use them. Cool. One final question. What's your favorite thing about momentum?
I think my favorite thing about Momentum is the people. I have really gotten to enjoy the Cincinnati tech community, from the attendees to the people organizing the events to the speakers who attend. I think it's really something special. It feels small, and yet it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger,
Yeah,
and it's just so well done.
cool. That's all I have. Is there anything that you want to bring up, talk about?
Well, you didn't ask me what I'm going to be talking about.
What is your talk about? I'm sorry.
So I'm giving a talk on visualizing code, and I'm really excited about it. It's one of my least silly talks because usually my talks are pretty out there, like learning how to automate my dog with AI, or predicting
Mhm,
whether or not Die Hard's a Christmas movie, or helping a burrito shop scale up, all
mhm.
these things. But this is about treating Git repositories and issue tracking systems as effectively databases, and seeing
Interesting.
what data can we pull out of our file structure, what data can we pull out of our Git history, and
Mhm.
how do we visualize that, and what can that tell us about our projects. So it's an exploration of data. It's an exploration of Python and data visualization. It's going to be an exploration of C# and .NET and some visualization techniques there. Um, I'm currently a master's student at Franklin University here up in Columbus and studying data analytics. And
Nice.
this is a project that I've been working on off and on with that program as well. It's likely to be my final project next summer. But I think there's a lot of insight that we can get from our repositories and the code that we work with on a daily basis. And so
For sure.
my hope is that by the time I'm giving this talk, I have a
Mhm,
free tool that I can give people to say, like, hey, all these things I told you are true.
mhm.
I package them into a bow. Here you go. Run this on your local Git
Nice.
repository. You can get some quick immediate takeaways. Because I've given this talk before,
Okay.
but it was like install 8 things and process the data in this way, and then maybe you can get some insight out of it. So I
Mhm.
want people to get more insight out of their code bases and understand a little bit more and get some value out of that. So
Nice.
we'll see what I can deliver by October. I know I will be able to deliver a good talk, but I hope to accompany it with a good tool as well.
Mhm.
But I have a couple other projects going on, a book, a course, and that master's program as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I occasionally sleep.
College is difficult.
Yeah, it's
But yes,
weird.
it sounds like an amazing topic. What could be some potential like we don't have to spoil your talk here, but what could be like some potential use cases of visualizing the code base like that?
Well, one of the things I've been able to benefit from is saying, "Hey, who touches which areas of code the most frequently, and what areas does one person touch and nobody else touches? What
Okay.
are areas that are frequently changed, and
Hmm.
what are areas that are frequently changed along with that? So we can start seeing some of these dependencies, um, and it's
Interesting.
kind of cool because it doesn't care about what language you're writing the code in, as long as it's tracked in the
Hmm.
file system. It's just insights there. But even if you don't care about code, you'll learn something about data visualization,
For
libraries like
sure.
Plotly and the like. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Very much looking forward to your talk. I think I'll probably save that for whatever time slot that's in because code visualization is something that I've been really interested in, and not just like visualizing the code base and how we are working on it, but also like how they might fit together to produce the end result, which is the software that we run.
Yeah,
So yeah, visualizing code bases is really interesting, and I think there's a lot that we can do there.
yeah, yeah, and that's kind of up my alley right now. I'm a consultant through Leading Edge up in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm also writing a book on refactoring with C sharps, and so it's like, Okay, how do we learn about our code bases we're trying to fix, and what are the
Mhm,
areas we should be focusing on, and things like that, right? There's a lot of tools around static code analysis, but not as much about behavioral aspects of it.
mhm,
So it's an interesting area to explore.
for sure. Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much, Matt. This was an amazing conversation. And if you're watching this right now, early bird tickets for Momentum are on sale, unless you're watching this like 3 months in the future. Uh, but while the early bird tickets are out and on sale, go and buy them while they're still cheap. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Matt.